Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Vincent Bova, Director of Dealer Experience at Pro Control. I'm joined by our Director of Marketing, Bill Hensley, and we're going to be delivering a Pro Control webinar on our R-Series relaunch. We're really happy to be here, and we're really happy that you're here. And thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. Um, the way it's going to work is we have a usual question box, and just please keep your questions aimed at the topic, Pro Control, and we're going to be doing the R series. Bill's going to say a few words, and we're going to do some work in the software, and we're going to show you some how-to videos and stuff like that. So we're really, really excited. We're really excited about this product launch. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Thanks, Vincent, and hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We know your schedules are busy. Appreciate your time with Pro Control today. We're here to talk about what's new, what's exciting. The highlight will be Vincent walking us through Pro Control Studio and how to set up the new UI and everything on the what we call the R series, the single room solution. Vince, skip forward a slide, please. There we go. The team, I think a lot of who are listening on today, those of you probably know either or both John and Angel on the West Coast and East Coast, respectively. Ben, I don't know if we're making the deck available at the end of the call here, but these are contact info for all of us. We're here to help. So next slide, please. So if you're new to Pro Control, the important information is that it is a full control ecosystem. These are not remotes with base stations, but systems that can scale from an elegant single room solution right up to an entire smart home integration. The ecosystem is the remotes, it's the control processors and all the accessories you'll need to delight your customer. Again, whether that's a media room cleanup or a control system engaging all the smart components in the house. Today, we're going to focus on that single room solution, what we call the R series, but I think we'll touch on the whole home opportunities with the Z series as well. Ben's going to walk you through the updated Pro Control Studio software, going to set up a basic media room system, and along the way, he'll highlight the new UI for the R series and the new Pro Panel app, which looks really cool. It's that on the right there. On the hardware side, the main update and new is already out there. It's what we call the R series Plus kits. We've added the charging dock to the Pro 24R, now called the Pro 24R Plus, and we've added 4 IR emitters to the ProLink R processor, now the ProLink R Plus. Key point with Pro Control is that even if you're doing other control brands, this can be your most profitable single room solution, whether it's a TV room, a guest room, bedroom, work from home office. And the Pro Control Studio Wizard is that secret sauce that speeds up your installation. So you get in, you get out, you get on with your business. It minimizes your time in the customer's home, which is particularly important in this COVID-19 world. So we'll make the audacious recommendation. Keep a Pro 24R Plus and a ProLink R Plus on every truck and use it for an add-on sale to elevate any TV or receiver installation. Then let's skip forward to another slide. So this week we launched a new website with a new homeowner targeted messaging. And we made that homeowner targeted messaging because we know that many end users come to the site referred by their integrator. You say, hey, I'm thinking of putting Pro Control in your house. I think it's going to be the right solution. Go take a look. We're leading with the value proposition directed to that homeowner. So when they get to the site, they say, yeah, right, this is exactly what I need. Next slide, please. We've updated the Pro Panel for the R series as well. We'll take a look at that interface, enabling your Apple device to direct a Pro Control system. And particularly if you're using the Z series, the two-way feedback when you're remote lets you do a lot of that off-site control of your home and your automation that you need to do when you're away. Next slide, please. Our message to the homeowner is simple. We integrate your home technology so you can focus on what's important. And our message to you that Ben will demonstrate in just a bit is how easy it is to set up for your customer. And next slide, please, as well. The other important message you need to know is that Pro Control is a protected line. We don't sell to end users and we don't sell online. We're committed to integrators like yourselves, and of course to our distributor partners to make it work for you. So we're going to take just a quick tour of the website. Next slide, and mostly so you can see where the support materials are. Then wiggle your mouse up there in the upper right. If you're an existing ProControl dealer, your existing login info still works. You can access all the dealer tools. If you need to register, you get right there next to the login button is registration. Next slide, please, Mr. Bova. Once you're logged in, the dealer menu gets exposed, and we've organized the support tools in the same method as on the old site. Right now, we're looking at the product information page. We'll tab over. Next slide, Ben. Technical bulletins, anytime you need to see what's going on, and stay right where you are, Ben. Training as well, we've updated that, and we're putting in a lot new training modules as well. There's already the first for the new R series, and over time, over the next week in particular, we'll be doing two things. One, we'll populate the schedule of webinar trainings that are coming up, and two, we'll be adding a lot of quick learn modules so that you can get in and figure out one little piece, and taken together, you'll see how easy it is to do a ProControl system. Next slide, please, Vince. So again, the key takeaway here is that ProControl is a control ecosystem, and it is one that is dedicated to dealer success. And with that, let's dive in. I'm going to hand it off to Vincent. Mr. Bova, take it away.
Okay, great job, Bill. It's always a pleasure. Bill is our marketing genius here, and you're going to hear a lot from him in the future. So obviously with ProControl, you have the R series, which is a one-way control, single room solution, but you can use it in multiple rooms thanks to the real strong radio frequency that you've been known to expect from RTI. You could use it as a standalone remote as part of a control system if you don't want to use that brain or processor in the system. The Z series, which we're not really going to be discussing today, and something we haven't revamped yet, is a two-way feedback, and that's good for the automation aspect. If you're doing smart home music, security, and other kinds of things. And a lot of people might ask, well, give me the Z series, give me the big guy, And to be honest with you, our R series is so well received by our dealers now that we wanted to reward that by, revamping it and giving you a nicer template and changing some of the software criteria to make it even easier to program. So yeah, we intend to go through the whole line, but the R series is a fantastic remote if you're doing a solution. Let's say the client already has a control system in the house and you want to implement a solution in a big guest bedroom or a kid's room, somewhere where the control is not going on. This is a really affordable option that's going to be easy for you to install, easy for the customer to digest, and you can just plug it where you need it. It's also a great solution for any kind of house where the customer doesn't have the budget or the equipment to even qualify for a heavier remote control. It also makes things a lot easier for you because you could be in and out in minutes. Let's talk about the brains of the operation, the control processors, and you're not going to get a control processor at this price point. For the ProLink R series, we build that 433 megahertz antenna into the processor to give you that all-in-one package. 4 routable IR ports plus 2 voltage sense allow you to use and control equipment of any type, and to use the voltage sense to sense contact closure or voltage trigger. It's ideal for media rooms, but you could use this application in any type of scenario. And we give you Ethernet support, even though it's a one-way control, just so that you can sync that system up over the network, update firmware, and so on. Now, the ProLink Z series is a two-way with a built-in 2.4 gigahertz Zigbee antenna. So yes, you get that two-way feedback, and we get the 6 routable IR ports, 2 serial, and 2 voltage sense. Now, let me just tell you that we always remember the jobs we win, but we never remember the jobs we lose. And usually it's because we passed it up because we don't have a solution for the customer on the lower end, or they don't have the budget for it. The ProLink R series will give you the edge you need. It's completely custom, it's a quick program, and it's a quick learning curve. And that brings me to my next point. It's very difficult to train people these days. With Pro Control, with the R series, you can get a new employee up to speed in very little time. Um, Even someone who's not really built to be a programmer can program the R series in short order. It's also incredibly quick for deployment, and that's really where it counts. That's where profit matters, and that's where you're really going to see the edge. And also, of course, the value. You're not going to get a touchscreen remote and a processor at this price point. You will get a base unit, which has far less intelligence, and a remote that probably has an LCD graphic screen, but doesn't have that touchscreen. So the customer really feels like he's getting that bang for the buck. Now, no control solution would be good without the accessories they come with. And we have tons of accessories for both of these lines. We have the Pro ZWI, which is a Z-Wave hub, which can serve up Z-Wave control for all your Z-Wave devices out there. You could run that via PoE, and you'll get up to 200 devices with that Pro ZWI. We also have the Pro Relay 4, which can be used with the R series or the Z series, and you can send out IR codes to this connecting block and trigger 4 relays capable of up to 28 volts. You also get the dry contacts from that as well, and that can also be run off of the PoE. The Pro IRCB4 is an IR emitter connecting block, and that will power up to 4 emitters to your IR ports. So you'll get 4 non-addressable emitters, and that'll give you the ability to control a really large system. So we also have a range extender called the Pro RFZ. That will extend your Zigbee signal if you're using the Z series. So you could use up to 4 of them in a house, and it'll really stretch the job. Okay, so we're done with the presentation. Let's go now and jump into the Pro Control software.
Hey, Ben, as you're diving in there, one of the questions that came in relates to the R series. Does it support IP drivers?
The R series does not support IP drivers. You would need two-way feedback and two-way control for IP drivers. So the R series is going to be that solution for the area of the market, which is actually really quite large, that isn't looking for that control. They just have simple equipment they want to control, and they don't need the two-way feedback or the cost for it, and that's what the R series will do. The Z series, on the other hand, will handle that. Okay, thanks, Bill. If you have any more, just let me know as we're moving into this. Okay, so once you open up the software, it's a very simple software. You're not going to see a lot of gadgets and gizmos. It's going to consist of 3 different panes. So we'll go over that. Also, if you want to change the skin on your software, go to the help menu, go to the user interface theme, and change it from light to dark or dark to light. So depending on your preference, you can change the user interface theme. So the dark would probably be good if you're doing some late night programming. Okay, the top pane. This is where we add our Pro Control devices. So let's click Add. Now, when you're adding a Pro Control series, you're either going to use the R series or the Z series. So we're going to use the R series in this system file. So let's start by adding our ProLink R processor. So we'll show you a little image of the processor, and you can get a good look at it this way and see what you're getting into. You have the 4 IR ports, which come with gain adjustment. You have the Ethernet control, and you have this sense input, which will actually consist of 2 sense inputs that are wired into one Ethernet jack or RJ45. You also have a USB connection if you want to sync it with USB if network is not possible in a room. So let's call this ProLink R Media Room, because we can name this anything we like. And we'll click OK. Now that we've added our processor, which is the brains of the system, let's go and add our Pro 24R remote control. Notice that everything else is grayed out because we've selected the R series. So we'll add our Pro 24R remote. And again, you get a little look at what it looks like. Now, one thing I love about this remote is that anyone can control it. Sure, it's got a touch screen. Sure, it's sophisticated, but it does have a great amount of hard buttons, which anyone can control, whether they're 5 years old or 95 years old, or if they're not technically savvy. This remote can be figured out pretty easily. So let's call this remote Pro 24R Media Room. And now we're going to select a theme. So in the past, we had one theme, the Deanna theme. That was our old template. We've revolutionized the template to be more in line with today's look and today's devices. And we called it Shelby. Shelby is our new template. So why not pick that as our theme? Now, once we select this theme on our remote control, any source devices that we add from this point on for this remote will use that theme. So let's click OK. And there we'll see our Pro 24R remote control. You might notice that when I hover over these devices, it gives you a little bit of information as well. It tells you when it was last saved or uploaded. So some useful information there. Next, let's go and add a Pro Panel device. I'm going to start with an iPad. You'll see an image of an iPad. We'll name this iPad Media Room, and we'll use that same Shelby template. It's that simple. Let's go and add an iPhone. Why not? We'll add our iPhone, and we'll call that iPhone Media Room. Any resolution, of course. Now let's go and add, because we have an iPhone, we might want to add an iPro 8 as well. Note that there's also legacy devices for other iPhones as well. So if you happen to come across a customer who hasn't upgraded his iPhone, we have a solution. So let's add that iPro 8 companion controller, and we'll call that iPro 8 Media Room. Now the iPro 8 is an interesting animal. It comes with customizable keycaps. It comes with a whole sheet of buttons that you can use and interchange. It should have every button you want, but we do have a laser shock service at RTI if you want to engrave as well. Now again, this remote's going to have all the bells and whistles you need to control all the popular devices out there. What the difference is that you can set it up so that when you press watch cable on this remote or watch Blu-ray, the Pro Panel devices will move with you. So let's add this device. And now we've added all of our Pro Control devices. Before we go on, we have to add control devices. Those are the source devices that are in our system. Let's start by clicking Add. You'll notice that the only option we have available is the infrared devices. The RS-232 devices and drivers are grayed out because those will apply to the Z series. So let's select the infrared device library. Now you have two options. You could either use our built-in library, which is accurate, complete, it's very consistent, and you'll find that it's got everything you need in this modern world. But if you come across another device that might be old or obscure, you could always use your own IR database of codes. We'll talk about in a future module how you can learn codes in and maintain your own IR devices with the IR Library Manager, which is installed with Pro Control software. So the idea of this library is to search through it and find a device you're looking for. Let's start by looking for a DirecTV. So I'm going to type in DirecTV. And as I type in, it weeds down the DirecTV models. I'm going to go with the HR Genie series satellite, all models, address 1. Now, once you select this, it'll show you that it'll name the device with a generic category name. This is a set-top box. But let's name this something a little more user-friendly. We'll call it DirecTV. Next, we're going to check off the pages that we want to have the Pro Control Software Studio auto program and create for us using the Shelby template. So I'm going to select the DirecTV template. Notice that we have templates for other types of set-top devices, Dish Network, TiVo, regular cable box, even a specialized Xfinity interface for you. So let's select DirecTV from all the remotes because we want that DirecTV interface. Okay, and click OK. All right, we've just added our DirecTV. Notice that there's all these check marks next to the devices, and that will allow you to include that DirecTV on remotes. If you uncheck those, uncheck any of those, you would restrict the DirecTV to not appear on certain remotes. And maybe that makes sense in certain jobs where you don't want certain sources to be accessible by every remote control, but you want the interface to be on the remote in case you need it later. So let's select another device now. We're going to go in the infrared devices again, Pro Control IR codes, and let's look for our Sony Blu-ray player. I'm going to type in Sony Blue, and that's all we needed to do. Notice our database is consolidated. All I have to do is select the most models, and I'll have all the IR codes I need. I'm happy with the device name, so I'll leave that alone, and we'll make sure that all of these Blu-ray interfaces are checked off for us, and click OK. All right, let's move on. Let's go for an Apple TV next. So I'm going to look for an Apple TV, and I'll see the generation 4 and the previous generations. So I'll pick the generation 4, and I'll change it from that category Media Manager to Apple TV. Notice that we do have various different media managers here. We have a media manager for Apple, Chromecast, a generic media player, maybe for those devices like movie streamers and those Android boxes that some people have. So let's pick the right one. I'm going to pick Apple TV from each controller, and we'll click OK. So there's our Apple TV. Next, let's add a Samsung Smart TV. So I'm going to look for Samsung TV. Sure enough, there's our Samsung TV most models. We'll pick that, and we'll leave the name as TV. We could always rename it as Smart TV, but we'll leave the name, and we'll check off the television templates for the new page on each device, and click OK. Okay, we just added our TV. Next, let's add our receiver, since this media room has a surround sound system. So let's look for a Yamaha RXA receiver. Notice we'll have several options. We could pick the main zone 2011 to present. We also have additional zones as well. So let's pick the main zone for the media room. And of course, we could change the name. I'm just going to call this receiver. And although I really don't want an interface, I'll still create one anyway, just so at least on the remote controls that I'm going to have a graphical display, just to show you how it'll create an interface. But I really don't need it, so I don't need it on the iPro 8. And we'll click OK. All right, so we've added our source devices, and we've added all of our Pro Control devices. We're now ready to configure our properties. Let's stop and see if there's any questions in the chat window. Let me get my questions here. So someone's asking if we can migrate one project from Deanna to Shelby. Yes, we're going to be talking about how to do that in additional modules. They're going to be more about swapping one device with another and swapping one template for another, just like our RTI Integration Designer software, Apex. So you could do all that with Pro Control. iOS only, someone's asking, meaning are the Pro Panel apps iOS only? Yes, at this time, the Pro Panel apps are iOS only. So someone's saying, thank you so much for different set-top boxes. And yes, you're welcome. You know, you really need to have that in today's day and age because Xfinity is a drastic difference from some of the other cable boxes. So even though we auto-program things, we do need to take some special considerations we still need to consider that. All right, so now we'll also answer all the questions you want at the end of the webinar if we didn't get to you during. So, all right, I'm now ready to go and configure properties. Now, I'm not going to configure every property, but I'm going to give you a basic idea how to do that. Let's start with the ProLink R processor because I always like to start from the top and work my way down. Now, when you configure a processor, all you need to really worry about is the everything here on the right side. So the system zone code is going to be changed from 0 to 255. Just pick any number. That'll make sure that if there's any competing ProLink R in that area, whether it's in the same development maybe, that it won't collude with your radio frequency. Your channel can be changed from 1 to 13, and let me just move this little window out of my way. And you can, this is for when you have another ProLink R upstairs that maybe your family member is using. And if you're both channeling up, sometimes you can have collusion. By changing the channel on your ProLink R and that ProLink R, you can avoid that collusion when you're doing things that like channeling up, which sometimes can cause collusion with other control systems. Now let's name our ports. So I'm going to name our ports as for the devices that they're using. So let's call the port 1 DirecTV. Let's call port 2 Blu-ray. Let's call port 3 Apple TV. And let's call port 4 TV/AVR. Now, what if you have a TV that doesn't use the processor, that you want to send commands out directly from the remote control and not use the processor and bypass the processor? In that case, you're going to skip naming the ports, and I'll show you how to do that in the next step. Synchronized pages, that's the secret ingredient to being able to make your Pro Panel devices track the iPro 8 and vice versa. What that means is if you say yes, when you hit watch cable on your iPro 8, it'll switch on your iPhone and iPad if you have them in the system. So it's a great way to make sure that they're all in sync with each other. Then there's port information. We're going to leave that port as is. You could enter in some DNS information here if you want to use your Pro Panel on the road. You enter in some geography like where you are, city, state, longitude, latitude, and some clock information. So make sure you put in your time zone so Pro Control knows where you are in the world. Okay? Now, the Pro 24R is a real simple property program. You want to enable the tilt switch? Yeah, of course. When you pick up that remote, then you want it to wake up. So let's say yes. The beeper, you could use it for on-screen buttons only or the keypad and on-screen buttons. I'll just leave it for the on-screen buttons only since those buttons on the hard buttons have that tactile feel. The tone you can change from low to high. The backlight timeout, let's change that to 30 seconds so that when it times out, if you don't touch it, it's not too quick. And you could change the backlight level from low, medium, and high. For the iPad, iPhone, iPro 8, there's no properties, so nothing to worry about there. Now, for the devices themselves, I'm going to show you how to set those properties for one or two devices, so you'll learn how to do it. Let's start with the DirecTV. All you have to do in this step is, number one, tell the system if you want the DirecTV codes to come from the processor or from the remote control. Now, that's what I was saying before. So for some reason, if you can't get an emitter to the DirecTV because it's in a crazy place, then you want to fire those commands out from the remote control. Once you select remote control, you won't be able to route the port. So we'll select processor in this case. The next step is, once you do assign the processor, tell the software which port that we already named, making it convenient, fires out from. Is it the DirecTV port? Yes, of course, it's the DirecTV. Blu-ray? No. Apple? No. TV AVR? No. Let's do one more. For the Blu-ray, yes, it's coming from the processor. Is it firing out of the DirecTV port? No. Blu-ray? Yes. Apple? No. TV AVR? No. So you're just going to go through and assign the ports. Okay? Simple as that. All right, so now we're cooking. Let's save our work to make sure. Let's call our system media room and click save. It's always good to do that at this point. So in case we want to ever get back to point where we just started creating our devices, this is a good time to do it. All right, so now our next step is to survey our work, right? Let's take a look at those templates and that programming we did for our controllers. Let's start with our ProLink Pro 24R remote control. I'm going to double click it. And when you double click it, it takes you right into the user interface display. On the left side, you're going to see some properties. In the middle, you're going to see your touchscreen or your user interface area. And on the left side, if there's an area for it, if it applies, you're going to see the hard buttons. And in this case, this remote has hard buttons, and you'll see that they're here for us to program or to edit programming and so on. Now, as you can see here, we've created for you the 4 activity buttons that are present on this control system. You can see that there are Apple TVs here, the Blu-ray, the television, the AVR. And we can expand our view here by clicking the zoom ratio. Let's make this a little bigger. Now, as you, of course, you know, Pro Control Studio, as well as RTI products, always have the ability, and that's what we preach, custom capability. You can make this interface look exactly the way you want. However, we gave you a big push so that you don't have to worry about that. If you wanted to deliver this to the client, you could. Now, these placeholders on the bottom are going to be invisible to the actual client. So they're just meant to be a way for you to align buttons if you need to. They're just guidelines. So kind of ignore them, but you could always delete them if you don't need them. So let's take a look at all the different pages that we've created. Now there's 2 ways to do that. You could go to the drop down on top and click on a page. Let's take a look at the Blu-ray page. And there we have it. Notice that all of our buttons have check marks next to them. Even the hard buttons, they all have check marks. That means that these buttons have been programmed by Pro Control Studio. If you want to see the underlying programming, and I'll make this pane a little wider, just simply click on the macro area and go from button to button and watch how each button has been programmed with commands from the device library. Now you could easily change these to anything you want. For example, if you don't like the eject button and you want to make this something else, well then click on the delete function, click add, and now these are where all your macro tools are. Click devices, then click the Blu-ray for the options, and you can see the whole code set. Just double click an option if you want to bring it in. So if you wanted to put something like maybe subtitle in here, you could bring the subtitle in. Now, as far as changing the remote cosmetically, that's simple too. Just go to the Properties tab, and you can change this, erase the text function here, and change this to subtitle. You're going to see a lot of other properties here. And we're going to cover all this like in future webinars, really in depth, how to do graphics, how to do customization. But in a nutshell, you could really change the way things look here. You could change the button states, and I'll open all these categories up here to give you an idea of what you can do. You could change the button placement. You could change the button state, whether they're reversed, the button's reverse state, or whether it should be inactive when the user touches it, or whether you want to show it on every screen for this mode if it had multiple pages. You could also change the text color. So if we wanted to, we could change this to any color in the spectrum, really, or you could use the basic color arrangement, and let's say select yellow. So it's really easy to customize. You could even change padding if you had graphics in there. Now, speaking of graphics, if you wanted to put graphics in a button, maybe we don't want this to be a subtitle. Let's erase this and let's put an image in here. I'm going to look for a Netflix function from our bitmap library. So I'm going to click on the images and look for Netflix. I'm going to drag the Netflix in there. And now I can go to the macro programming here, delete this, and I could look for a Netflix function in my macro steps list. I'll make this bigger so that you can see this better. I'm going to look for a Netflix function, and I'll pop one in. So it's really quick and easy to perform maintenance. It's real simple. Let's go look at another interface. Let's look at the Apple TV. That's been pretty much programmed for us. All these buttons, all these hard buttons have been programmed with commands from the Apple TV library. We have all the main functions on the screen, so there's really not much you need to do. Again, if you click on the images folder here in Pro Control, and now we look at the different bitmap libraries, let's click on the Shelby remote images. That's for the Pro 24R library. If you scroll through this, you'll see that there's a bunch of different images here. And you can use images interchangeably as long as they make sense in terms of resolution. But you could take any of these backgrounds that you see, and backgrounds have that little yellow symbol, and bring it in and drop it and change the look drastically, blend it into the client's decor, or make it feel a little warmer. It's up to you. You could also use your own images. Let's take a look at our other interfaces. There's our television. Notice that one of the devices didn't get programmed, so you could just program that with anything you like. And even the receiver got programmed with a few functions. A lot of the hard buttons were programmed, and you can set up the touchscreen the way you want if you want to give that to the client. Now let's take a look at our other controllers. So I'm going to hit the device menu here, and I'm going to go look at our iPad. Now, when I double click the iPad, you're going to see something a lot different. First of all, you're going to see on the left side of the screen, it's kind of like a toolbar here, so to speak. It's going to be a toolbar that will come automatic with our iPads in Pro Control. So you can change these to have any function you want. We give you the main functions by default. The idea is that this toolbar is going to appear on every single page of the Pro Control software. If you click on background, it gives you a little bit of a summary of how to set up this toolbar, and you could swap things out. You could change the title here by clicking on the dashboard name, and you could call this, I don't know, anything you want, like main functions, so to speak. Now when you go back to sources, this thing will be called main functions on top. Also on our screen here, you'll see that we've programmed something called a viewport, and it says viewport, right click to edit. If a viewport is basically a way to give you a scrollable screen that will allow you to change an area of the screen without other areas of the screen. Now, before even explaining this, I have a quick little video. I'll show you what this actually looks like when it's loaded up and what it looks like, what viewports actually do. So again, what is a viewport? A viewport is an area of the screen the programmer can create a gesture-controlled scrolling menu. The user may scroll to the left or right inside a viewport without having the rest of the interface change. So let's take a look at the viewport. See our home screen? Watch how you can flip the gesture control to the left or right to left and change without changing the rest of the screen. Let's look at another viewport on a typical activity. You can see how you could use one frame of the viewport for main commands and one for other commands. Let's take a look at another viewport. Let's go to the television and watch how we can flip from the main functions to the transport keys. And of course, on the left side of the viewport of the actual iPad interface, you'll be able to see that dashboard and those main commands. Now, people can set those up with just about anything you want. In this case, we did main commands like volume up, volume down, mute, and so on and so forth. So if I go back to the software, I could drag and drop anything I want into this list. I can go to my image folder here, and I could just look for some, let's see, I could look for anything I want, any kind of thing I want to put in that menu and just drag it in. And I could program this to do whatever I'd like. Okay, now for the viewport, this won't gesture control if there's only one frame of it. How do we know there's one frame? It says panel 1 of 1. So even though you see the viewport, you won't be able to flip from left to right. You won't need to. But if I start adding additional pages, it's a great way to only create a single page, but use an area of the page to have a scrollable screen for the client. Let's take a look at some other pages. How about our DirecTV page? How's that for programming? It's all done for you. Everything is all programmed and ready to roll. if I click on any of these buttons here, you can see that everything's been programmed. If I right click and edit the viewport, I can see that on the first frame of the viewport, see over here, it says panel 1 of 2. On the first panel of the viewport, it has some main commands from us, which, by the way, have all been programmed. The check mark, the little check mark you see up there, means that they've been programmed. Doesn't mean you can't change the order of this. You can move things around pretty easily. Let's go to the next frame of the viewport by advancing to the next frame. Over here, you'll see our transport buttons. And if we wanted to make additional frames of our viewport, just click the next function, move to the next frame, or the next panel as it's called, and drag in buttons in here for the stuff that you want. I'll make this pretty random. Let's see. Just gonna put anything in here just to give you an idea. But now you would have 3 panels. So now the user can just gesture control to the right or left. So real powerful programming. But again, the trick is that you don't have to do anything really. To program your channel favorites, let's edit this. Sure, you could drop in your own channel favorites, and we give you a bunch. If you look under the channel icons TV, let's say we want to find a Food Network icon. I could bring in a food icon and just swap out anything. Watch how the icons just overlay the existing one. The existing one goes away. You don't have to worry about replacing buttons and things like that. If I want an HDTV icon, I can just bring it in and pop it in like that. It's up to you how you want to do it, but programming this is real simple. Click on the button, click on macro, click on the add function, open up our library of devices. There's our DirecTV, and just program the channels. 232. Let's program the food channel. 550, 543. CNN 202. You get the idea. It's that simple. One quick look now at our Apple TV. Now there's another way to look at all your pages, and the way to do that is to click on the Pages overview. And I'll stretch this out because you can. The Pages overview lets you have an overhead view of all the pages on your panel here. So on my iPad here, I can see all the different pages that are on my iPad. And if I want, I can just click on any page. I can delete the page, rename it to something else, and so on and so forth. So this is a way to get to a page real quickly and then just do a sanity check. So if I want to jump real quick to my Blu-ray page, boom, that's simple. So whether you use the drop-down or the Pages function, it's up to you, but you may use both interchangeably. Let's take a look at the iPhone. So I'm going to get out of this Pages view, go to my iPhone, and we'll just do a little brief look at this. The iPhone also has been, and I could shrink this down just to give you a better idea. The iPhone, of course, is using a viewport as well. We've programmed viewports for you. Our old template, we had viewports. We didn't do that for you. Now you have the luxury of having, and why are viewports really good? Like you have the luxury of having multiple pages without having the client having to navigate around. They're very used to gesture control, so it's real simple. So let's take a look at some pages. There's our Blu-ray page. You'll see 2 viewports. This is interesting. Here's a viewport on the first panel. And look, there's a little direction here, swipe for keypad. On the first panel, there's the direction keys. And on the second panel, there's our keypad. So viewports are just a great way of taking advantage of real estate and making it really easy for the client to get around without having to jump from page to page to page and things like that. And our television. And of course, even our receiver has been programmed for us. Okay? Now, our iPro 8 is real simple. Let's go back to our devices. Click on the iPro 8. Here, everything is done for you. You're not going to be able to see much on here because it's not a graphical remote, but you could jump to each source. Let's jump to satellite TV. Notice that let's click the macro field here so we can see what our programming looks like. On every one of our devices, we have our programming. If you click on any button, you'll see that it's been programmed for you. There's really nothing to do. Let's click on our Blu-ray page. Again, everything has been programmed with all the Blu-ray functions. Anything with a check mark. Now, if you see something that doesn't have programming that you want to program, no problem. You want an exit function? Click Add, click Devices, find your Blu-ray, and just add something to that button. I'll add a video format. It's up to you. Okay? Now, another thing that we do for you, and I'll go back to my Pro Control, Pro 24R Pro Control remote. I'm going to go to my home page. Besides giving you the home buttons, we also give you some of the programming as well. If I click on the Blu-ray button, we'll start with that, and click on macro. Notice how we already have most of the commands you need here to make this macro work. We can see commands running on the remote control and commands running on the processor. The commands that are running on the remote control are things like delays and page jumps. Those can't run on a processor in a one-way system. But on the processor, we can see all of our commands running. We could change our order around. If our input is wrong, we could simply just go to our devices, go to our receiver, and then look for our inputs and bring a new one in. Maybe that's input HDMI 3 instead. We could just delete that. So we give you all the programming already, so you don't really have to do a lot of work. Now, when you use these macro tools, there's also a lot of other functionality in here. There's other tools that you can use to make your macros pinpoint precision control. We don't force you to use our macros. We allow you to make changes according to how you want the button to work. There's also special features that allow you to really improve the client experience. So it's up to you how you want to use these, but we do go over these in advanced training. Well, we go over these in separate trainings. I wouldn't call them advanced. So whether you want to put delays or you want to use certain commands like the toggle code command, or use some flag operations, which we go over in another training class, that's really ways to improve the client experience and really make your programming more powerful. But it's not 100% mandatory. And someone who's looking to deploy a system is 95% done, maybe even more. Again, it's real simple to program. There's really not much to it. And again, you can just go from remote to remote and see how most of the work is already done for you. I'm going to take some questions from the chat window and see if we have anybody who has a question on, let's see. Anyone have any questions? Doesn't look like we have many questions. Will this programming GUI change be available to existing customers with our systems already, or only new our systems? So that's a good question. So Matthew's asking, what if my client has an older system, and I bought a Pro 24R for the client. What if I want to go and redeploy with this new template? Yeah, no problem. This will work for any Pro R series remote or Pro panel remote or iPro 8 remote, so you don't have to worry about any of that. Okay. Now, we do plan on having some additional webinars, but before we show you some of the webinars we're going to be coming up with, I want to just show you some quick custom interfaces that you can do with Pro Control, just to show you and this is all R series programmed, just to show you the range of items. Now, a lot of these templates are available from third-party sources. There's very inexpensive templates out there that you can buy that can really change the whole interface and the way it looks. But again, this is not going to be built into Pro Control like our Shelby and Deanna template are. This is just going to be supplementary. So it might take a little more work, but there's a lot of custom. But the point here is that there's a lot of custom capability. Here we're utilizing that left side menu for a room selection. And then you can see the different screens that are possible with Pro Control. Okay, so the whole idea here, custom is possible and it's not hard to do. You don't have to be a Photoshop expert. We give you a lot of different graphics that you can use to mix and match. And just to give you an idea real quick, I probably should do that. Let me just give you a quick idea of what kind of images that we have in our Pro Control. So I'll just use the iPad as a guide. So on the images, I'll clear this out. You're going to see things like channel icons. You're going to see the Deanna assets, quick keys, which are small little logos that you can put in. You can mix and match these on any template. Now the Shelby template has remote images. Those are for more geared towards the towards the Pro 24R, or iPad images or iPhone images. So the iPad images are things like backgrounds and things like that. You also have source and zone icons, which will give you a whole set of different types of activity icons and different types of functions that you would need for your programming. So again, it's just as simple as bringing and dragging one of these in. If you want to drag and drop this into a button, it's just that simple. And if you change your mind, it's even simpler. So you have all these functions that can you can use here. And we went pretty crazy. The graphic designer here went pretty bananas building some of these for you so that you don't have to worry about using your own graphics, which you also can, by the way, use. Can the iPro 8 be used without an Pro Panel device, but just to be able to follow when sources are changed with another controller? So, okay, so it's a two-part question. The iPro 8 can be used alone, yes. So you don't even need a Pro 24R controller. You don't even need a Pro Panel app. But the only devices that track those movements are Pro Panel. So hopefully that answered that question. That's a good question. Thank you for that, Ken. Okay, now let's talk about some of the future webinars that are coming up. Let's see here. And these are subject to change slightly, but this is what we have in mind. So we're going to do some advanced macro programming in Pro Control. We're going to do some cool macros to help us deal with some of the some stubborn equipment like devices that don't have discrete on and off codes, and how to set up things to be conditional, whether you should send delays or not. We're going to be using flags and other types of we're going to be using events like sense events and startup events, which are possible in the ARC control. Then we're going to do a separate webinar on programming the iPro 8 companion controllers with Pro Panel devices. So it'll be entirely based on Pro Panel and iPro 8, which is a really cool remote. Then we're going to do some working with graphics in Pro Control Studio, because this webinar didn't do the justice in the fact that you can really customize to your heart's content. You don't even have to revamp everything. It's just simple to make subtle little changes, and make your own little viewports, make your own little scrolling lists and things like that. Utilize third-party graphics, like if you download an icon from some website, you can implement it. We're going to look at our graphic tools and like how to align and things like that. How to program RTI products with Pro Control Studio. So yeah, you can take advantage of some RTI products with Pro Control, such as the AD series amplifiers. We're going to show you how to program those within R series remote control. And we're going to have a dedicated webinar, which I'm really excited for business and selling opportunities, which will probably be hosted by our sales guys. And they're going to give you some good selling techniques for Pro Control R. Now, again, a lot of people might think, hey, it's like I do two-way systems. What's the deal here? You have to think about how big that bottom market is. It's much larger than the top market, where people are really interested in automation and control, and they want to spend all this money. The bottom of the market is where there's going to be a ton of opportunity. So by putting, a couple of these things in your truck, it makes a lot of sense, because if you go to a customer's house and they have another control system, but they're looking to add on to another room. Maybe you don't even sell that control system, but you can give them what they want. They just want to control some components. They don't need the automation and all that stuff. This is a great option. So we're going to have some expert tips, because our sales guys are the best in the industry, and we're going to have some upgrade paths and teach you how to upgrade, which is another good point, to consider. Pro Control has an upgrade point. You can always upgrade. It's great to learn Pro Control Studio, because if you learn the R series, then 90% of the Z series. And believe it or not, people that learn Pro Control Studio have a very easy time adopting our RTI software, Apex. So if you have the need to do a commercial system or a really powerful system, you have that upgrade path. You have us in your corner. And I can tell you now that our Pro Control R line is going to be very heavily supported. So if you guys need help design, you need help programming, you need help figuring things out, you can contact me or anyone else at RTI at any point, and we're at your disposal. All right. So on behalf of Bill and I really appreciate everyone coming. Let's just see if there's any last minute questions. Will the Shelby GUI be available on the Z series in the future? I mean, it's possible that we're going to do that, but right now we're just focusing on the R series. We want to focus on that bottom part of the market and work our way up. Remember, we already have a solution for two-way control, and of course we want to do the Z series as well. But the iPro 8 and the Pro 24R are controllers that are really going to give you a lot of profit, and they're going to fill a lot of needs in that market where people don't have the budget or the need for sophisticated control. Okay? So thanks for coming, everyone. Please stay tuned for our future webinars. We're really excited about delivering them, and there's also an accommodation program. You can contact us about that also. And so thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.